Actually, nobody here even likes you." The words hung in the air as my sister Jennifer smirked across the table. My fork froze midway to my mouth. The green beans trembled slightly as my hand shook. 29 years of belittlement culminated in this moment at our parents' anniversary dinner. Mom and Dad exchanged uncomfortable glances, but remained silent as always. Their golden child could do no wrong. I placed my fork down carefully, a calm washing over me. This night would be different. I was done being the family doormat. Growing up in Westfield, Pennsylvania, I always felt like I was living in the shadows. Our modest 2-story colonial house on Maple Avenue looked perfect from the outside, just like every other aspect of our family was supposed to be. My father Howard worked as a bank manager, and my mother Grace taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. We were the picture-perfect American family, at least on the surface. Then there was Jennifer, my older sister by 3 years. From the moment I could form memories, I understood the hierarchy in our home. Jennifer was the sun, and the rest of us merely planets orbiting around her. She had this natural charisma that drew people in, combined with the kind of classic beauty that made heads turn. At 32, she still commanded attention whenever she entered a room. I remember being 5 years old, watching Jennifer at her dance recital. The spotlight illuminated her perfect pirouettes while I sat between my parents, tugging at my mother's sleeve to get her attention. "Look, Mom," I whispered, drawing a picture of Jennifer dancing on my program. Mom barely glanced down, her eyes fixed on my sister. "Not now, Sally," she murmured. "Your sister is performing." That became the soundtrack of my childhood. "Not now, Sally. Your sister is speaking. Your sister is performing. Your sister needs help with her homework. Your sister has a competition." Despite the constant comparison, I desperately wanted Jennifer to like me. When I was 7 and she was 10, I saved my allowance for 6 weeks to buy her a friendship bracelet kit for her birthday. I remember the surge of hope as she unwrapped it, the momentary flash of a smile before she tossed it aside for the more expensive gifts from our parents. "Thanks, I guess," she said, already reaching for the next package. That night, I heard her on the phone with her friend. "Sally got me this super lame bracelet kit." Like, what am I, 5 years old? So embarrassing. I started to notice the pattern when I turned 12. Any achievement of mine was immediately overshadowed or diminished. When I won the school spelling bee, Jennifer reminded everyone at dinner that she had placed first in the regional competition. When I made the honor roll, she pointed out that her GPA was still higher. My parents never seemed to notice this pattern, or if they did, they chose to ignore it. The incident that crystallized everything happened when I was 16. After years of feeling invisible, I had finally been asked to the spring formal by Tyler Davis, one of the nicest boys in school. I spent weeks preparing, saving money from my part-time job at the local bookstore to buy a pale blue dress that made me feel beautiful for the first time in my life. The night of the dance, I stood in our living room for photos. For once, I felt like the center of attention as Mom fussed with my hair, and Dad awkwardly told me I looked nice. Jennifer, home from college for the weekend, watched from the staircase. "Let me get a picture with my little sister before her big night," she insisted, sliding an arm around my waist. As we posed, I felt a sudden cold wetness spreading across my chest. Jennifer's red punch had somehow slipped, leaving an ugly stain blooming across the bodice of my blue dress. "Oh my gosh, I am so clumsy," Jennifer exclaimed, her hand covering her mouth in what I now recognize as mock horror. "Sally, I am so sorry." I looked to my parents, tears welling in my eyes, but instead of comfort, I received dismissal. "These things happen, Sally," my mother said, already rushing to get a towel. "Jennifer didn't mean it." "Why are you always so sensitive?" my father added, checking his watch impatiently. I went to the dance with a hastily cleaned dress that still bore a faint pink stain, and the knowledge that even on my special night, I wasn't allowed to be upset when Jennifer ruined it. Tyler was kind about it, but I spent most of the evening in the bathroom trying not to cry. After that night, something shifted inside me. I stopped trying to win my family's approval and focused on building my own life. I retreated into my art, finding solace in drawing and design. I worked hard in school, got a scholarship to attend college in Philadelphia, and gradually built a career as a graphic designer. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Something Jennifer couldn't take away or diminish. I limited my visits home to major holidays and kept conversations with my family surface level. It was easier that way, less painful. Until 3 weeks ago, when my mother called about their 35th anniversary dinner. "We expect both our girls to be there," she said, her tone making it clear that absence wasn't an option. "Your father and I have been married for 35 years, Sally. The least you can do is show up for dinner." I agreed because saying no seemed harder than enduring one evening. I even felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, things would be different now that we were all adults. That hope lasted until the day before the dinner. I was at Parkside Mall looking for an anniversary gift when I heard a familiar laugh from the neighboring aisle in the department store. Jennifer's voice carried clearly as she talked on her phone. "Yeah, I have to go to this pathetic anniversary dinner tomorrow," she was saying, her voice dripping with disdain. "Mom's making such a big deal about 35 years, like it's some major accomplishment to stay in a loveless marriage." I froze, my hand hovering over a crystal picture frame. "Dad's just as bad," Jennifer continued, "acting all proud when everyone knows he's been passed over for promotion 3 times because he has no backbone. And Mom with her desperate attempts to look younger. It's honestly embarrassing." I should have walked away, but I couldn't move. I stood there, listening as my sister methodically tore apart our parents to her friend, mocking the very people who had always put her first. "Anyway," she sighed dramatically, "at least Sally will be there for them to focus on. One look at her sad single life and they'll forget all about bothering me about when I'm getting married." I set the crystal frame back on the shelf with trembling hands, a strange mixture of anger and clarity washing over me. Nothing had changed. Jennifer was still cruel, and I was still expected to be the family punching bag. But something had shifted inside me. I was 29 years old, and suddenly I was done accepting my assigned role. As I left the store empty-handed, I made a decision. Tomorrow night would be different. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew I wouldn't sit silently through another dinner of subtle put-downs and forced smiles. For once, I would stand up for myself, even if it meant upending the careful balance my family had maintained for decades. What I didn't realize was that Jennifer's casual cruelty in the department store was just the beginning. The anniversary dinner would become a turning point none of us could have anticipated, least of all me. The next day, I arrived at my parents' house 2 hours early, as requested. Mom had insisted she needed help preparing, though I suspected it was more about having an audience for her pre-dinner stress routine. The familiar colonial on Hillcrest Drive looked exactly the same as always, right down to the slightly crooked mailbox my father had been promising to fix for at least a decade. I took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. Despite being 29, I still felt 16 whenever I stood on this porch. "Sally, finally," my mother said as she opened the door, glancing at her watch, though I was precisely on time. "Come help me in the kitchen. Your father had to run out for more ice." I followed her through the living room, which had been meticulously cleaned for the occasion. Fresh flowers stood in a vase on the coffee table, and the good vacuum lines marked the carpet. Some things never changed. In the kitchen, Mom had already prepared most of the meal. A pot roast simmered in the slow cooker, filling the house with a rich aroma that triggered an immediate nostalgia. No matter how tense our family dynamics, my mother's cooking had always been a source of comfort. "You could have done something with your hair," Mom commented as I washed my hands at the sink. "It's a special occasion." I touched my shoulder-length brown hair self-consciously. I'd actually spent extra time styling it that morning, but apparently my efforts fell short of expectations. "I thought it looked nice," I said quietly, immediately hating how small my voice sounded. Mom responded non-committally, handing me a peeler for the potatoes. "Jennifer just got promoted at her firm. Did she tell you? Junior partner now. They almost never promote someone her age. But you know your sister." "That's great," I said automatically, though Jennifer hadn't told me anything. We barely spoke outside of family gatherings, and she and Scott just put an offer on that beautiful house in Brookside, 3,000 square feet with a pool. Mom continued assembling a salad as she talked, her hands moving efficiently. You know, Sally, if you were open to meeting someone, Clara Thompson's son just moved back to town after his divorce. He's a dentist. I focused on peeling the potatoes, fighting the familiar feeling of inadequacy. My one-bedroom apartment and modest graphic design career suddenly seemed painfully small. I'm actually working on some exciting new projects, I offered, trying to redirect the conversation. I just landed an advertising campaign for a national coffee chain. That's nice, honey, Mom said absently, already moving on to her next task. Did I tell you Jennifer's boyfriend Scott is talking about proposing soon? Such a catch, that man. Comes from the Harrisburg Scots. Old money. The front door opened, and my father's voice called out, I'm back. Where should I put the ice? In the freezer? Howard? Where else would it go? Mom called back with an exasperated sigh. Dad appeared in the kitchen doorway. His tall frame slightly stooped now, hair more gray than brown. His eyes lit up when he saw me, and for a brief moment, I felt a surge of warmth. There's my Sally, he said, giving me a quick side hug. Good to see you, kiddo. Is your sister here yet? And just like that, the moment was gone. I shook my head, returning to the potatoes as Dad checked his watch. She said she might be running late. Big case at work, he explained proudly. I bit my tongue, remembering Jennifer's mall conversation about the pathetic dinner she was dreading. While Mom finished the salad, she asked me to set the dining room table with the good china. In the cabinet where we kept the tablecloth, I found a stack of old photo albums. Curiosity got the better of me, and I flipped one open while looking for the anniversary tablecloth. There we were, the Peterson family through the years. What struck me immediately was the positioning in nearly every photo. Jennifer front and center, Mom and Dad flanking her, and me, always slightly to the side. In several photos, I was literally being edged out of the frame, a partial figure on the margin of the family portrait. One photo in particular caught my eye. My high school graduation. I remembered feeling so proud that day, having graduated with honors despite struggling with undiagnosed anxiety. In the photo, my parents stood beaming, but they weren't looking at me in my cap and gown. Their proud gazes were directed at Jennifer, who had flown home from college for the ceremony. Memories flooded back, each one highlighting a moment where Jennifer's cruelty went unchecked. My 10th birthday party, where Jennifer told my friends that I still wet the bed sometimes. Not true, but the damage was done. My mother telling me to stop making a fuss when I tried to explain. My first art show in high school, where Jennifer loudly critiqued my paintings to her friends, making sure I could hear. My father saying I should appreciate her honest feedback. The time I brought my college boyfriend home, and Jennifer flirted with him relentlessly all weekend. My parents laughing it off as Jennifer being Jennifer when I tried to explain how it made me feel. Each time I tried to discuss my feelings with my parents, the response was predictably dismissive. You're too sensitive, Sally. Your sister doesn't mean anything by it. Why do you always focus on the negative? I was still lost in thought when the doorbell rang, announcing Jennifer's arrival. I quickly replaced the photo album and finished setting the table, steeling myself for the evening ahead. The guest of honor has arrived. Jennifer's voice carried from the entryway, followed by my parents' enthusiastic greetings. I took a deep breath and joined them in the living room. Jennifer looked stunning as always, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves, designer dress accentuating her slim figure. She carried an expensive-looking gift bag that probably contained something far nicer than the set of cooking utensils I had finally purchased. Sally, she acknowledged me with a brief nod before turning back to our parents. Mom, you look great. Have you lost weight? And Dad, loving the new glasses. I watched as my parents practically glowed under her attention. That was Jennifer's special talent, making people feel momentarily special before the inevitable put-down. 35 years, Jennifer was saying, handing over her gift. I still don't know how you've tolerated each other for so long. Our parents laughed as if this were the height of humor, while I caught the edge in her voice that they seemed to miss. During pre-dinner drinks in the living room, Jennifer dominated the conversation with stories about her important cases, her fabulous vacation plans, and her perfect boyfriend. Occasionally, she would turn to me with a too sweet smile. "So, Sally, still at that little design company? That must be comfortable. Not everyone is cut out for high-pressure careers." "Sally made the graphics for a coffee company," Mom offered, somehow making my achievement sound trivial. "How cute," Jennifer responded. "Like those little doodles on coffee cups?" "Scott's firm handles accounts worth millions, but I guess we all contribute in our own little ways." My parents chuckled, oblivious to the dig or choosing to ignore it. I sipped my wine and said nothing, a familiar knot forming in my stomach. "And are you seeing anyone yet?" Jennifer pressed, knowing full well I wasn't. "I could set you up with Scott's cousin if you want. He has a thing for artistic types. Not conventionally attractive, but he's got a good heart." "Jennifer," Dad said, but his tone was indulgent rather than reprimanding. "What? I'm trying to help." "Not everyone can meet someone like Scott on their own." I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment away from Jennifer's barbs and my parents' complicit silence. In the hallway bathroom, I stared at my reflection, wondering why I had expected anything different. I was 29 years old, reasonably successful, and independent, yet 30 minutes in my childhood home reduced me to feeling like an inadequate teenager again. I splashed cold water on my face, considering my options. I could make an excuse and leave early. I could continue as always, smiling through the subtle cruelty and escaping as soon as politely possible. Or I could. A notification sound interrupted my thoughts. Jennifer's phone lay on the bathroom counter where she must have left it. A text message preview appeared on the screen. From Scott. "Good luck with the parents. Remember what we talked about. Don't tell them about the Aspen trip before they give you the anniversary check. Love you." As I stared at the message, another text appeared. From Scott. "Also, try not to be too hard on Sally this time. Your parents mentioned she seemed really down at Christmas. Might be having money troubles again." I wasn't having money troubles, and I hadn't seemed down at Christmas. I had been quiet because Jennifer had spent the entire day making snide comments about my career, my appearance, and my love life. But what struck me most was the casual reference to an anniversary check and the deliberate plan to hide information until after receiving it. This wasn't just Jennifer being casually cruel. This was calculated manipulation. As I left the bathroom, Jennifer was coming down the hall. "There you are," she said. "Mom's serving dinner." "Oh, I left my phone in there." She brushed past me into the bathroom, emerging moments later with her phone clutched tightly. Something in my expression must have alarmed her, because she paused, studying my face. "What?" she demanded. "Nothing," I replied, the same response I'd been giving for 29 years. But internally, something had shifted. The dinner was about to begin, and for once, I wasn't going to play my assigned role of family doormat. "To 35 wonderful years," my father proclaimed, raising his wine glass, "and to many more with my beautiful bride." We all clinked glasses across the dining table. The good china gleamed under the chandelier light, and candles flickered in the center of the table. Mom had gone all out, as she always did for special occasions. 35 years, Jennifer echoed, her tone just slightly mocking. "I honestly don't know how you did it. Scott and I can barely decide on dinner without arguing." "Marriage takes work," Mom said, serving the roast beef. "You young people give up too easily these days." "Oh, speaking of giving up," Jennifer seamlessly transitioned. "Remember when Sally tried out for cheerleading in 9th grade? That was hilarious." My cheeks burned at the memory. I had practiced for weeks, only to freeze during tryouts. Jennifer, already head cheerleader, had watched from the sidelines with her friends, not even attempting to hide their laughter. "I think it's great that Sally tried," Dad said mildly, though he was smiling at the memory. "Not everyone can be as naturally athletic as you were, Jenny." "I was actually thinking about that the other day," Jennifer continued as if Dad hadn't spoken. "How many things Sally started and then just quit when they got hard. Remember the piano lessons? And that summer she thought she wanted to be a camp counselor but came home after 3 days? I had pneumonia, I said quietly. The doctor made me come home. Well, you always did have a flair for the dramatic, Jennifer replied with a dismissive wave. Anyway, Mom, tell them about your bridge club drama. And just like that, the conversation moved on. My correction forgotten. This was how it always went. A pattern so familiar I could predict it step by step. Actually, I said, surprising myself by speaking up, I wanted to share some good news. The campaign I designed for Summit Coffee just won a regional advertising award. Oh, that's wonderful, honey, Mom said, momentarily interested. Isn't that nice, Howard? Dad nodded, mouth full of potatoes. What's the award called? Jennifer asked, her tone innocently curious but her eyes sharp. The Metropolitan Marketing Excellence Award for Digital Design, I said, feeling a small surge of pride. Never heard of it, Jennifer said with a slight shrug. Must be a small industry thing. Scott just won the National Bar Association's Rising Star Award. Only 10 lawyers in the country get it each year. And there it was. The familiar deflection and one-upmanship. I felt the brief moment of pride in my achievement shrivel under her words. The mashed potatoes are excellent, Grace, Dad said, clearly trying to change the subject. Thank you, Howard. I added a little cream cheese this time. Mom beamed at the compliment. Remember when Sally tried to cook Thanksgiving dinner that one year? Jennifer laughed. The turkey was still frozen in the middle. I was 16, I said. And I was trying to help because Mom had the flu. Well, clearly cooking isn't your thing, Jennifer continued. But that's okay. Not everyone can be good at everything. Some people just have to accept being mediocre. I stared at my plate, pushing food around with my fork. The familiar lump in my throat made swallowing difficult. Jennifer just redecorated her condo, Mom said proudly. She has such an eye for design. I'm actually a professional designer, I pointed out, immediately hating how petulant I sounded. Yes, but Jennifer has natural taste, Mom continued obliviously. You should see what she did with her living room. So sophisticated. Sally's apartment is cute, Jennifer offered with faux generosity. Very student-like. Eclectic, I think they call it. I'm not a student. I have a career, I said, my voice stronger now, and my place reflects my personal aesthetic, not what's trendy in home magazines. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. Someone's touchy tonight. I'm not touchy. I'm just tired of every accomplishment or choice I make being diminished or criticized. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. This wasn't part of our usual script. I wasn't supposed to push back. Sally? It's Mom and Dad's anniversary, Jennifer said, her voice taking on the patronizing tone she reserved for when she thought I was being unreasonable. Let's not make this about your insecurities. My insecurities? I repeated, feeling heat rise to my face. Yes, your insecurities. We all know you've always been jealous of me, but tonight isn't the time. Jealous? Of you? The words escaped before I could stop them. Girls, Mom interjected nervously. Let's focus on celebrating. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Jennifer continued, ignoring Mom. Sally's always been jealous because I'm successful, I'm in a serious relationship, and I have my life together. While she's still figuring things out at 30. I'm 29, I corrected automatically. Whatever. The point is, we're all tired of walking on eggshells around your feelings. You're too sensitive about everything. I'm too sensitive? I could feel years of suppressed anger bubbling to the surface. Yes, you are. And honestly, it's exhausting for all of us. Jennifer gestured to include our parents in her assessment. I looked at Mom and Dad, waiting for them to say something, to defend me just once, but they stared at their plates, uncomfortable, but silent. Actually, nobody here even likes you. Jennifer delivered the line with a casual cruelty that suggested she'd been thinking it for years. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. My fork froze midway to my mouth. The green beans trembled slightly as my hand shook. 29 years of belittlement culminated in this moment at our parents' anniversary dinner. Mom and Dad exchanged uncomfortable glances, but remained silent as always. Their golden child could do no wrong. I placed my fork down carefully, a strange calm washing over me. "I've been waiting for you to say that out loud for years," I said quietly. Jennifer blinked, clearly surprised by my response. She'd expected tears, or for me to leave the table, or to crumble into silence as I always had before. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice for the first time. "It means," I said, meeting her eyes steadily, "that I've always known what you thought of me, what you all thought of me. I just didn't think you'd actually say it out loud at dinner." "Sally, Jennifer didn't mean—" Mom started, but I cut her off with a raised hand. "Yes, she did. She absolutely meant it. And you know what? That's fine. But if we're finally being honest with each other, I think there are some other truths that should come out tonight." Jennifer laughed nervously. Always so dramatic. "This is why people find you exhausting." But there was something new in her eyes. A flicker of uncertainty. Maybe even fear. For the first time in our relationship, my sister couldn't predict what I was going to do next, and neither could I. "You know what I find exhausting, Jennifer?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady, spending my entire life being told that my feelings don't matter, that I'm too sensitive, that I need to accommodate your constant need to put me down, to make yourself feel superior. Jennifer rolled her eyes, but I caught the nervous tap of her fingernails against her water glass. "Here we go with the victim routine." "It's not a routine. Let me ask you something. Why did you tell Alicia Peterson that I still wet the bed when I was 10 years old?" Jennifer looked genuinely startled by this specific reference. "What? I never—" "You did, right before my birthday party. You told her, and she told everyone else. I spent the entire party being called Soggy Sally. Remember now?" Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mom stared at her plate. "That was 20 years ago," Jennifer dismissed with a wave. "Kids say mean things." "Fine. How about when you deliberately spilled punch on my dress before spring formal? Or when you told my college boyfriend that I had been hospitalized for mental problems in high school when I actually had pneumonia?" "Sally, bringing up ancient history isn't helping anything," Mom interjected. "Jennifer has always been a bit competitive, but she loves you." "Does she?" I asked, turning to face my mother. "Because I heard her yesterday at Parkside Mall, telling her friend how pathetic this anniversary dinner would be." Jennifer's face went pale. "You were eavesdropping on me? I was shopping for an anniversary gift when I heard you. You were talking so loudly. I'm sure half the store heard you mocking Mom and Dad's loveless marriage and Dad's career disappointments." My parents' expressions shifted from uncomfortable to hurt. Dad's shoulders slumped slightly, and Mom's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "I never said that," Jennifer insisted, her voice rising. "Sally's making this up because she's jealous of me. She's always been jealous." "Am I making up the text from Scott about not mentioning your Aspen trip until after you get the anniversary check from Mom and Dad?" Jennifer's eyes widened. "You read my texts? That's invasion of privacy. Your phone was on the bathroom counter with the screen lit up. I didn't have to snoop." "Howard, Grace, she's lying," Jennifer said, turning to our parents with pleading eyes. "You know how she gets when she feels left out." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's always been your go-to, hasn't it? When confronted with your behavior, accuse me of lying or being too sensitive." I turned to my parents. "Do you want to know what else your perfect daughter has been saying about you?" "Sally, that's enough," Dad said, his voice carrying a warning. "Is it? Because I think we're just getting started with Honesty Hour. Did you know that Jennifer regularly mocks your career to her friends, Dad? Calls you a failure because you never made regional manager?" Dad's face reddened, and he looked at Jennifer, who was shaking her head frantically. "And Mom, she makes fun of your weight and your clothes. Calls you desperately trying to look younger to her friends. Says your book club is just an excuse for sad middle-aged women to drink wine and pretend they're intellectual." "Stop it!" Jennifer shouted, slamming her hand on the table. "You're making this up!" "Am I? Should I continue? How about telling your friends that you're just waiting for the inheritance? Or that you plan to put Mom and Dad in a nursing home at the first sign of trouble?" Or that you think Dad's collection of model trains is pathetic for a grown man? Or that Mom's cooking is bland and boring, but I pretend to like it so she'll keep paying for things? Jennifer's face had gone from pale to red. You've lost your mind. I would never say those things. Really? Because I have proof. Jennifer froze. What do you mean, proof? I reached for my phone in my purse, tapping the screen a few times before placing it in the center of the table. After I overheard you at the mall yesterday, I was upset. I went to that coffee shop next door, the one where I won the advertising award you dismissed. I was sitting there trying to decide whether to even come tonight when you walked in with your friend Megan. You sat at the table right behind me. I don't think you even noticed me there. I pressed play on my phone's voice recorder. Jennifer's unmistakable voice filled the dining room. I can't believe I have to spend tomorrow night pretending to care about my parents' marriage. 35 years of quiet desperation is nothing to celebrate. My dad's such a loser, staying at that bank all these years when everyone knows he's never getting promoted again. The recording continued, Jennifer's voice growing more animated as she detailed all her complaints about our parents, each one more cruel than the last. She called our mother pathetic, our father a failure. She laughed about manipulating them for money while planning trips she deliberately didn't tell them about. And then came the most damning part. At least they have sad little Sally to focus on. One look at her pathetic life, and they'll forget all about pressuring me about marriage and kids. She's useful that way, I guess. The eternal screw-up makes me look even better. I stopped the recording. The silence in the dining room was absolute. Jennifer stared at the phone, then at me, her expression cycling through shock, anger, and something I'd never seen on her face before. Shame. You recorded me without my knowledge. That's illegal, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state for recordings, I replied calmly. I was part of the public space conversation. Completely legal. How could you? Jennifer's voice broke, tears filling her eyes. But I recognized the performance, having seen it countless times when she wanted to deflect from her behavior. How could I? How could you, Jennifer? These are your parents. They've given you everything. They've always put you first. Always made excuses for your behavior. Always made me feel less than to protect your feelings. And this is how you talk about them behind their backs? I turned to my parents, whose faces reflected shock and deep hurt. I'm sorry you had to hear that. But I'm not sorry I played it. For 29 years, you've never believed me when I told you how Jennifer treats me. Maybe now you'll understand. Mom's eyes were filled with tears. Dad sat frozen, his face ashen. I think you should go, Dad said, his voice rough. For a moment, I thought he was talking to me, the familiar surge of being the one blamed rising in my chest. But he was looking at Jennifer. What? Jennifer said, clearly shocked. Dad, she's clearly manipulating you. I was just venting to a friend. Everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. Those didn't sound like things you don't mean, Dad replied, his voice gaining strength. Those sounded like your genuine thoughts about your mother and me. And about Sally? Mom added quietly, surprising me. The things you said about your sister were cruel, Jennifer. This is ridiculous, Jennifer said, pushing back from the table so violently her chair nearly toppled. I'm not going to sit here and be attacked on what's supposed to be a celebration. No one is attacking you, I said. Your own words are what's damning you right now. Shut up, Sally, Jennifer snapped, her composure cracking completely. This is all your fault. You've always been jealous of me, always trying to turn Mom and Dad against me. Well, congratulations. You finally succeeded. I hope you're happy. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the dining room. Seconds later, the front door slammed with enough force to rattle the china cabinet. The three of us sat in silence, the anniversary dinner in ruins around us. The candles flickered, casting long shadows across the table. I think I should go too, I said finally, feeling suddenly exhausted. Sally, Mom began, then stopped, seeming unsure what to say. I'm sorry for ruining your anniversary, I continued, rising from my chair. That wasn't my intention. I couldn't take it anymore. 29 years of being told my feelings don't matter, that I'm too sensitive, that I'm imagining things. I reached my breaking point. Did Jennifer really do those things to you? Dad asked, his voice small. The punch on your dress? The rumors? Yes, I said simply. And 100 other things over the years. Every time I tried to tell you, you told me I was overreacting or being too sensitive. Mom wiped a tear from her cheek. We never realized. You never wanted to realize, I corrected gently. It was easier to believe I was the problem than to acknowledge Jennifer's behavior. I gathered my purse and jacket. I should go. I've given you a lot to think about, and I'm sure you need space to process everything. Neither of them stopped me as I walked to the front door. As I opened it, I heard my father's voice behind me. Sally. I turned. He stood in the hallway, looking suddenly older than his 62 years. Thank you, he said, the words clearly difficult for him, for telling us the truth, even though it hurts. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat, and stepped out into the cool evening air. As I drove home, tears finally came, but they weren't entirely tears of sadness. There was relief mixed in, the release of a burden I'd carried for decades. I had no idea what would happen next with my family. But for the first time in my life, I had spoken my truth and been heard. Whatever came next, I would face it with the knowledge that I had finally stood up for myself. 3 days passed without a word from my family. I alternated between relief at finally speaking up and guilt for ruining my parents' anniversary. Several times, I picked up my phone to call and apologize, then put it down again. I had nothing to apologize for except perhaps my timing. On the 4th day, my phone rang. Dad's name appeared on the screen. I answered with a racing heart. Sally? It's Dad. His voice sounded tired. Hi, Dad. Your mother and I would like to see you. Could you come over for coffee this afternoon? The request was unexpected. I have a client meeting until 3, but I could come after that. 3:30 would be fine, he said. And Sally? Jennifer won't be here. It's just us. That was even more surprising. Okay, I'll see you then. The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxiety. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway at 3:30, my stomach was in knots. The house looked the same as always, but somehow I felt like I was arriving at a different place entirely. Mom opened the door before I could ring the bell. Her eyes were slightly red, as if she'd been crying. Sally, she said, pulling me into an awkward hug. Thank you for coming. Dad was waiting in the living room with 3 mugs of coffee already poured. The formal living room, rarely used except for special occasions, felt like a strange choice for what would clearly be a difficult conversation. We've been doing a lot of thinking, Dad began after I sat down. And a lot of talking. We owe you an apology, Sally, Mom said, her voice quavering slightly. Many apologies, actually. I sat very still, afraid to break whatever spell had prompted this unprecedented admission. We didn't want to see what was happening between you and your sister, Dad continued. It was easier to tell you to be more understanding than to address Jennifer's behavior. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why was it always me who had to understand, adapt, forgive? Why never her? My parents exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Because Jennifer demanded attention, Mom said finally. From the time she was very small, she required constant validation. When she didn't get it, there were tantrums, rebellion, drama. You were easier. I was ignored. I corrected, the words sharp despite my attempt to keep my tone neutral. Yes, Dad agreed, surprising me. You were. You were self-sufficient, quiet, capable of entertaining yourself. So we focused on the squeaky wheel. That doesn't make it right, I said. No, it doesn't, Mom acknowledged, tears filling her eyes. We failed you, Sally. We let Jennifer treat you poorly because confronting her behavior seemed harder than asking you to tolerate it. That was wrong of us. The admission was so unexpected that I found myself momentarily speechless. "Have you talked to Jennifer?" I finally asked. Dad's expression hardened slightly. "We tried. She came over yesterday, expecting us to have forgiven and forgotten. When we tried to discuss what we heard on that recording, she became defensive. She claimed you manipulated the recording, that you'd edited her words to make her look bad." "I didn't," I said quickly. "I would never." "We know," Mom assured me. "We know your sister's voice, her patterns of speech. That recording wasn't doctored." "She left angry," Dad continued. "Said we were choosing you over her, that we were betraying her. She doesn't seem to understand that actions have consequences." "I never wanted to cause a family rift," I said, feeling a twinge of guilt despite myself. "You didn't cause this, Sally," Dad said firmly. "Jennifer's behavior caused this, and our failure to address it earlier. We've enabled her," Mom added, wiping a tear. "All these years we've excused her selfishness, her cruelty. We thought we were being loving parents, but we were actually failing both of you." The admission was stunning. For so long, I had wished for my parents to see the dynamic between Jennifer and me clearly. Now that they finally did, I felt oddly uncertain. "What happens now?" I asked. "We'd like to try to rebuild our relationship with you," Dad said. "The real relationship we should have had all along, not the one where we treated you as an afterthought." "And Jennifer? We've told her she needs to take responsibility for her behavior if she wants to move forward with us," Mom explained. "She didn't take it well, but that's her choice to make. We're also thinking about getting some family counseling," Dad added, looking slightly uncomfortable with the admission. "Your mother and I realize we have some unhealthy patterns that need addressing." I nodded, still trying to process this monumental shift. "I'd like to rebuild too," I said finally. "But it's going to take time. 29 years of feeling second best doesn't disappear overnight." "We understand," Mom said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "We don't expect instant forgiveness. We just want a chance to do better." As I drove home that evening, I felt lighter somehow, as if a weight I'd carried my whole life had begun to lift. I harbored no illusions that everything would be perfect going forward. There would be missteps, old patterns reasserting themselves, difficult conversations. But for the first time, I felt hope that my relationship with my parents might become something healthy and nurturing. What I didn't anticipate was Jennifer's response. The following week, my phone exploded with text messages from extended family members and old family friends. "How could you hurt your sister like this? Your parents are devastated by what you've done. Jennifer told us everything. You should be ashamed." Apparently, Jennifer had launched a campaign to paint herself as the victim, telling anyone who would listen that I had manipulated our parents with doctored recordings and lies. According to her version, I was jealous of her success and determined to ruin her relationship with our parents. For a moment, the old familiar doubt crept in. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe I should have kept quiet as I always had before. Then my phone rang. It was my cousin Bethany, my mother's sister's daughter, who had always been close with Jennifer. "Sally, I just wanted to check if you're okay," she said, her voice gentle. "Jennifer's been calling everyone with this wild story about you trying to turn your parents against her." "Oh," I said, unsure how to respond. "And you're calling to?" "To tell you I don't believe her," Bethany said firmly. "I've seen how she treats you at family gatherings. How she always has to one-up you, how she puts you down. I should have said something years ago, but I didn't want to cause drama." "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "That means a lot. You're not alone, Sally. More people see the truth than you realize." After we hung up, I sat on my couch, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of me was hurt by Jennifer's attempts to villainize me, but another part felt strangely liberated. For the first time in my life, I wasn't consumed by what my sister thought of me or how she portrayed me to others. I knew my truth, and apparently, others were beginning to see it too. That night, I received a text from my father. "Your mother and I have our first counseling appointment tomorrow. Thank you for helping us see what we've been blind to for so long." It was a small thing, a simple text message. But to me, it represented the first step on a new path. A path where my feelings mattered, where my voice was heard, where I wasn't defined by my relationship with my sister. Jennifer's campaign of victimhood would undoubtedly continue. Some family members would believe her, others wouldn't. But for the first time in my life, I was okay with that uncertainty. I had spoken my truth, and that was enough. 2 weeks after the disastrous anniversary dinner, my parents invited me over for Sunday lunch. It was a beautiful October day, the trees in their neighborhood ablaze with fall colors. As I pulled into their driveway, I noticed another car already parked there, one I recognized instantly. Jennifer's sleek silver Audi. My stomach dropped. I hadn't expected to face my sister so soon, and certainly not without warning. I considered turning around and leaving, but that would only play into her narrative of me as the irrational, jealous sister. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the front door. Dad answered my knock, his expression apologetic. "Sally, I'm sorry. Jennifer showed up unannounced about 20 minutes ago. We didn't have a chance to warn you." "It's okay," I said, though it wasn't. "I can handle it." Inside, Mom was arranging a plate of sandwiches on the dining room table, while Jennifer sat in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I entered, her expression instantly shifting to one of wounded innocence. "Sally," she said, her voice carefully modulated to sound tentative. "I didn't know you'd be here." That was almost certainly a lie. Jennifer had likely timed her spontaneous visit precisely to coincide with my expected arrival. "Jennifer," I acknowledged with a nod before turning to help my mother. "Girls, let's all sit down and have a nice lunch," Mom said, her voice unnaturally bright. "I made those chicken salad sandwiches you both like." We gathered around the table in uncomfortable silence. Dad said a brief grace, his voice tense. For several minutes we ate without speaking, the only sounds the clink of glasses and the crunch of potato chips. "So," Jennifer finally broke the silence, "I've been thinking a lot about our family lately." "Here it comes," I thought, bracing myself. "I think we've all said and done things we regret," she continued, her eyes wide and sincere. "Family dynamics can be so complicated, can't they? I know I haven't always been the perfect sister." It was a masterful non-apology, designed to distribute blame equally while acknowledging nothing specific. I'd seen this performance before, the way Jennifer could appear to take responsibility while actually deflecting it. "Jennifer," Dad said, his voice uncharacteristically firm. "We talked about this. Vague generalizations aren't going to heal anything." Jennifer's eyes widened in surprise. Clearly, she hadn't expected Dad to challenge her. "I'm trying to extend an olive branch here," she said, a note of irritation creeping into her voice. "Sally recorded a private conversation without my knowledge and used it to turn you against me. I think I'm being very generous even sitting at the same table with her." "That's not what happened," I said quietly. "Oh, really? You didn't secretly record me and then play it at what was supposed to be a celebration dinner? Because that's exactly what happened." "You said cruel things about our parents," I replied, maintaining eye contact despite my racing heart. "You've been saying and doing cruel things for years, to them and to me. The recording just made it impossible for you to deny it for once." Jennifer's carefully composed expression slipped, revealing the anger beneath. "You've always been jealous of me. Always. This whole victim act is just your latest attempt to get attention." "Jennifer?" Mom interjected. "That's exactly the kind of comment that's hurtful and unproductive. Dr. Phillips helped us see how dismissing Sally's feelings has been damaging." "Dr. Phillips? Who's Dr. Phillips?" Jennifer demanded. "Our family therapist," Dad explained. "We've had 2 sessions so far. You're in therapy because of what Sally said? This is unbelievable." Jennifer threw her napkin on the table. "You're all being manipulated and you can't even see it." "No one is being manipulated," Dad said firmly. "We're simply acknowledging patterns that have hurt this family for too long. Your mother and I have realized we enabled your behavior towards Sally. We prioritized your feelings over hers consistently, and that was wrong of us." Jennifer stared at him in genuine shock. This was clearly not how she had expected this conversation to go. In her version of events, she would make a few vague admissions, shed a tear or two, and everything would return to the status quo, with her at the center of the family universe. So that's it? You're choosing her over me now? Jennifer's voice rose, the wounded innocence giving way to outrage. This isn't about choosing, Mom said. It's about recognizing that we've allowed an unhealthy dynamic to continue for far too long. I can't believe this, Jennifer said, pushing back from the table. After everything I've done for this family, I'm the one who visits regularly. I'm the one who calls. I'm the one who brings nice gifts and takes you to nice restaurants. And this is the thanks I get? Those things don't give you the right to be cruel, I said quietly. Jennifer turned on me, her eyes blazing. You've ruined everything. You couldn't stand that they loved me more, so you had to destroy our family. The statement hung in the air, revealing more than Jennifer had intended. In her mind, our parents loving her more had been the natural order of things, a right she felt entitled to. We love both our daughters, Mom said, her voice trembling slightly. We always have. But we haven't always shown it equally or fairly. This is ridiculous, Jennifer snapped, standing up. I came here ready to forgive and move forward, and instead, I'm being attacked. I'm leaving. Jennifer, please. Dad started, but she was already grabbing her purse. Don't bother calling until you come to your senses. She tossed over her shoulder as she headed for the door. And don't expect a Christmas gift this year, or an invitation to my wedding when Scott proposes. The front door slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the suddenly quiet house. Mom's eyes filled with tears, and Dad reached over to hold her hand. I'm sorry, I said automatically, the old habit of taking responsibility for Jennifer's behavior kicking in. Don't apologize, Dad said firmly. You didn't do anything wrong. Your sister needs to face the consequences of her actions for once. But she's so angry, Mom said, dabbing at her eyes. What if she really doesn't speak to us again? Then that's her choice, Dad replied. Dr. Phillips helped us understand that we can't control Jennifer's reactions, only our own behavior. We finished lunch in subdued conversation, the weight of the confrontation hanging over us. As I prepared to leave, Mom hugged me tightly. We're trying, Sally, she whispered. We know we have a lot to make up for. I know, Mom, I said, hugging her back. That means everything. Over the next few months, a new pattern began to emerge in our family. My parents and I met weekly, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just for coffee. Our conversations became deeper, more honest. They asked questions about my life, my work, my feelings, questions they had never thought to ask before. They started coming to my art shows and design presentations. Dad helped me hang new shelves in my apartment. Mom called just to check in, not to tell me about Jennifer's latest achievements. Meanwhile, Jennifer maintained her distance, sending occasional texts to our parents that alternated between guilt-inducing, I guess you don't care that I'm going through a hard time, and angry. I hope you're happy with your new family. Dynamic. She continued her campaign with extended family, though fewer people seemed to be buying her version of events as time passed. The change wasn't perfect or smooth. My parents still sometimes slipped into old patterns, comparing me to Jennifer or minimizing my feelings. But now, they caught themselves doing it, or I felt comfortable pointing it out. We were learning a new way of relating to each other, one based on mutual respect rather than established roles. 4 months after the anniversary dinner disaster, my cousin Bethany called me with unexpected news. Scott broke up with Jennifer, she said without preamble. Apparently, he overheard her talking to a friend about how she was only with him for his money and family connections. He confronted her, and she couldn't talk her way out of it. I felt a complex mix of emotions at the news. Part of me, the part that had been hurt repeatedly by Jennifer over the years, felt a sense of poetic justice. But another part felt genuine sadness for my sister. Despite everything, she was still my family. Has she told Mom and Dad? I asked. I don't think so, Bethany replied. She's been telling everyone it was her decision to end things, that Scott wasn't ambitious enough for her. That sounded like Jennifer, rewriting reality to protect her ego. But for the first time, I felt something other than anger or hurt when thinking about my sister. I felt pity. Jennifer had spent her whole life manipulating others, putting people down to feel superior. And where had it gotten her? Alone, estranged from her family, spinning lies to maintain her image. That evening, I called my parents and shared what I'd heard. Not to gossip, but because I was genuinely concerned about Jennifer. Should one of us reach out to her? I asked. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I think that should come from you, Sally, Dad said finally. It would mean more. Me? After everything she's done? Precisely because of everything she's done, Mom added. You extending compassion when she expects rejection might be exactly what she needs to see. I thought about it overnight, weighing my lingering hurt against the possibility of healing. The next morning, I composed a simple text. I heard about you and Scott. I'm sorry you're going through this. If you want to talk, I'm here. I didn't expect a response, and for 3 days, I didn't get one. Then, on the 4th day, my phone chimed with a message from Jennifer. Coffee tomorrow? Beanstalks on Main. 10 a.m. It was the first direct communication we'd had in months. I typed back a simple, I'll be there, and tried not to overthink what might happen. When I arrived at the coffee shop the next morning, Jennifer was already seated at a corner table, 2 cups in front of her. She looked different somehow, less polished than usual. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her makeup was minimal. I got you a latte, she said as I sat down. You still drink those, right? I do. Thank you. We sat in awkward silence for a moment, neither sure how to begin. Scott's engaged, Jennifer said abruptly. To his assistant. They've apparently been seeing each other for months. Oh, I said, genuinely surprised. I'm sorry, Jennifer. Are you? She asked, but without her usual edge. She sounded genuinely curious. Yes, I said simply. It hurts to be betrayed by someone you trust. Something flickered in her eyes at that. Recognition, perhaps. After all, she had betrayed my trust countless times over the years. Everyone thinks I ended it, she said, staring into her coffee. That's what I've been telling people. But he dumped me. Called me manipulative and self-centered. I waited, sensing there was more she wanted to say. The thing is, she continued after a moment, I can't even really argue with him. I am those things. I always have been. The admission was so unexpected that for a moment, I couldn't respond. Why did you text me, Sally? She asked, finally meeting my eyes. After everything I've done to you, why would you reach out when you heard I was going through a hard time? I considered my answer carefully. Because you're my sister. And despite everything, I've always wished things could be different between us. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, a genuine emotion I'd rarely seen from her. I don't think I know how to be different. I don't even know where to start. Maybe start by being honest, I suggested gently. With yourself first, then with others. She nodded slowly, wiping away a tear. I'm sorry, Sally. For so many things. I don't even know if I can list them all. You don't have to list them all today, I said. We have time. We talked for over 2 hours that morning, the beginning of what would be many difficult but necessary conversations. Jennifer wasn't magically transformed overnight. She still had moments of defensiveness, still sometimes fell back into old patterns. But for the first time in our lives, she was trying. And so was I. Healing our family wouldn't be quick or easy. There would be setbacks, difficult moments, old wounds reopened before they could properly heal. But sitting across from my sister that morning, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Hope. Hope that the patterns of a lifetime could change. Hope that family bonds, even damaged ones, could be repaired. Hope that the future might look different from the past. As I drove home from the coffee shop, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. It had started with pain, with that devastating moment at the dinner table when Jennifer had voiced what I'd always feared. Actually, nobody here even likes you. But from that painful moment had come truth. And from truth, the beginning of healing. I hadn't known, when I decided to stand up for myself that night, where the path would lead. I only knew I couldn't continue as before, accepting cruelty as my due. That one decision had changed everything, rippling outward to transform relationships I had thought were set in stone. There was still a long way to go. Jennifer and I were taking small steps toward a different kind of relationship. My parents were learning, sometimes stumbling, to create a more balanced family dynamic. Extended family were slowly seeing the truth beyond Jennifer's carefully crafted narrative. But for the first time in 29 years, I felt like an equal member of my own family. Not the afterthought, not the easy target, but a person whose feelings and experiences mattered. And that was worth every difficult moment it had taken to get here. Thanksgiving arrived with a blanket of early snow, transforming my parents' neighborhood into a winter wonderland. 6 months had passed since the anniversary dinner that had changed everything. 6 months of hard conversations, tentative reconciliations, and a family slowly learning to relate to each other in healthier ways. I parked in front of my parents' house, taking a moment to gather myself before going in. This would be our first major family gathering since everything had happened, and Jennifer would be there. Though we had met for coffee several times and had made genuine progress in our relationship, I still felt a flutter of anxiety at the thought of spending an entire day together with the extended family present. "You can do this," I told myself, retrieving the sweet potato casserole from my passenger seat. "You're not the same person you were 6 months ago." Mom opened the door before I could knock, enveloping me in a warm hug that smelled of cinnamon and sage. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart. I'm so glad you're here." "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom." I returned the hug, noticing the genuine warmth in her eyes when she pulled back to look at me. These small moments still surprised me, the feeling of being truly seen by my mother. The house was warm and fragrant with cooking smells. Dad was watching football in the living room with my Uncle Mark, but he immediately got up when I entered. "There's my girl," he said, giving me a side hug. "Need help with anything?" "I've got it, thanks, Dad." I smiled, still adjusting to his newfound attentiveness. In the kitchen, I found Aunt Linda and Cousin Bethany helping Mom with dinner preparations. They greeted me warmly, and I noticed Bethany give me a subtle thumbs up. She had become something of an ally over the past months, often checking in on me and offering support. "Jennifer's not here yet," Mom said, answering my unasked question. "She called to say she's running about 30 minutes late." I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief at the delay and nervousness about her eventual arrival. The Jennifer I had known all my life would have used a family gathering like this to reassert her dominance, to subtly put me down while charming everyone else. But the Jennifer I had been getting to know over coffee for the past few months seemed genuinely interested in changing those patterns. I joined the kitchen preparations, enjoying the easy conversation with my aunt and cousin. We were laughing about Bethany's latest dating disaster when the doorbell rang. "That'll be Jennifer," Mom said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I'll get it." The kitchen fell momentarily silent, everyone aware of the potential tension. I took a deep breath and continued slicing cucumbers for the salad. Jennifer entered the kitchen a moment later, followed by a tall, dark-haired man I didn't recognize. "Happy Thanksgiving, everyone," she said, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness I wasn't used to hearing from her. "This is Adam." "Adam, this is my family." We all exchanged greetings, and I noticed how Jennifer's eyes lingered on me, gauging my reaction. Adam seemed nice enough, shaking hands and offering to help with anything needed. He carried a bottle of wine and what looked like a homemade pie. "Adam's a pediatric surgeon," Jennifer said, but without the boastful tone she would have used in the past. It was simply information, not a bid for impressed reactions. "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "How did you two meet?" "At a hospital fundraiser," Adam replied. Jennifer was doing the graphic design for their promotional materials. I raised an eyebrow at that. Jennifer had always dismissed my career in graphic design as trivial compared to her corporate law practice. "I've been doing some freelance work," Jennifer explained, catching my look. After everything that happened with the firm, well, I needed a change. This was news to me. Jennifer and I had been working on our relationship, but she hadn't mentioned leaving her prestigious law firm. Before I could ask more, Mom announced that dinner was ready, and we all moved to the dining room. The large table was set beautifully with Mom's best china and candles. Dad carved the turkey while everyone found their seats. I noticed that for the first time in family memory, Jennifer didn't automatically take the seat closest to our parents. Instead, she and Adam sat across from me. As the food was passed around, conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Uncle Mark talked about his new retirement plans. Bethany shared stories from her teaching job. Adam spoke about his work with children, his genuine passion evident. Then Jennifer did something unexpected. As Dad was telling a story about his first Thanksgiving with Mom, Jennifer interrupted him. "I bet Sally never told you about her new project," she said, directing everyone's attention to me. "She's designing a children's book series, and the illustrations are amazing." The table fell momentarily silent. This type of generous redirection of attention was completely out of character for the Jennifer we all knew. Yes, I've been working with an author on a series about inclusion and diversity for elementary schools," I confirmed, surprised that Jennifer had brought it up. "She showed me some of the artwork last week," Jennifer continued. "It's really impressive. I'd love to see it sometime," Adam said, seeming oblivious to the undercurrents at the table. "Me too," Mom added, her eyes moving between Jennifer and me with wonder. The meal continued, and I waited for the other shoe to drop. For Jennifer to follow up her compliment with a subtle dig, or to somehow turn the conversation back to herself. It never came. Instead, when Aunt Linda asked Jennifer about her work, she was surprisingly candid. "Actually, I left the firm in September," she said. "It was a difficult decision, but I realized I wasn't happy there. The culture was. Well, it rewarded behavior I'm trying to change." Our parents exchanged glances, clearly hearing what Jennifer wasn't explicitly saying. Her cutthroat tactics and manipulation, so prized in corporate law, were the same behaviors that had damaged our family. "I'm doing consulting work now," she continued. "More flexible hours, less pressure. It's an adjustment, but a good one." When dessert was served, Jennifer offered to help clear the dinner plates, another unprecedented event. As we worked side by side in the kitchen, she spoke quietly. "I'm trying, Sally. I know it doesn't erase everything, but I really am trying." "I can see that," I said honestly. "It means a lot." "Adam knows everything," she admitted. "About how I've treated you, about what happened at the anniversary dinner. I told him on our third date, sure he'd never call me again. But he did," I observed. "He did. He said everyone has parts of themselves they're not proud of, but the important thing is recognizing those parts and working to change them." I smiled, liking Adam more for this wisdom. He's right. And for what it's worth, I can see the change in you. Jennifer looked relieved, as if she'd been holding her breath waiting for my assessment. "I'm seeing someone. A therapist. She's helping me understand why I always felt the need to put others down to feel good about myself." "That's great, Jennifer." "Really." We rejoined the others in the dining room, where conversation had turned to holiday plans. As we ate pumpkin pie and apple crisp, I noticed my parents exchanging glances again, this time with small smiles. After dessert, Jennifer and Adam offered to help Dad hang Christmas lights on the front porch. It had become something of a family tradition to start the Christmas decorations on Thanksgiving evening. In previous years, Jennifer would have begged off, claiming the cold weather would ruin her hair, or that hanging lights was beneath her. As they bundled up and headed outside, Mom and I washed dishes together in companionable silence. "Your sister seems different," she finally said, handing me a plate to dry. "She is," I agreed. "We both are." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so proud of both of you. And so sorry it took your father and me so long to see what was happening. Mom, we've talked about this. You don't need to keep apologizing." "I know, but sometimes I think about all those years we could have had a closer relationship with you. All those years we could have helped Jennifer become a better person sooner. It breaks my heart." I put down my dish towel and took her hands. We can't change the past, Mom. All we can do is make different choices going forward. That's what we're all doing now. She nodded, wiping away a tear. When did you get so wise? Probably around the time I decided I deserved better than being everyone's emotional punching bag, I said with a small smile. We finished the dishes, and I helped Mom pack leftovers for everyone to take home. Through the window, I could see Dad, Jennifer, and Adam hanging lights, their laughter visible in puffs of breath in the cold air. Later, as I prepared to leave, Jennifer approached me by the front door. "Thanks for giving me another chance," she said quietly. "I know I didn't deserve it. Everyone deserves a chance to change, Jennifer. Not everyone would have offered it, especially after what I put you through." She hesitated, then added, "I really like the person you've become, Sally. Actually, I think you were always this person. I just couldn't see it through my own issues. I like the person you're becoming too," I replied honestly. She hugged me then, a real hug without the stiffness or performance that had characterized our previous interactions. I hugged her back, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't expected. As I drove home through the snowy streets, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. From that devastating moment at the anniversary dinner, when Jennifer had declared that nobody liked me, to this Thanksgiving, where genuine connection had begun to replace decades of hurt, the change hadn't been magical or immediate. It had required hard conversations, tears, and the courage to break patterns established since childhood. It had required my parents to face their own failures, Jennifer to confront her harmful behaviors, and me to learn to speak up instead of shrinking away. There would still be difficult moments ahead. Old habits didn't disappear overnight, and healing wasn't linear. There would be times when Jennifer might slip back into old behaviors, when my parents might inadvertently show favoritism, when I might retreat into silence rather than express my needs. But we were all committed to a different path now. We were learning that true family isn't built on perfect appearances or established roles. It's built on honesty, respect, and the willingness to grow. Sometimes, as painful as it is, families need to break before they can properly heal. Standing up for myself that night at dinner had been the hardest thing I'd ever done. Speaking truth in the face of a lifetime of silence had terrified me. But I had discovered something powerful in the process. The most important words can be the ones that break destructive silences. I had spent 29 years believing that keeping the peace was more important than my own well-being. I had accepted the role of family doormat because fighting against it seemed impossible. But once I found the courage to say enough, everything changed. Not just for me, but for all of us. My parents found the courage to face their failures and begin to repair them. Jennifer found the motivation to examine her behavior and work toward change. And I found my voice, perhaps the greatest gift of all. As I pulled into my apartment building's parking lot, I felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over me. Not for what had happened, but for what had come from it. The broken family dinner had led to a stronger, healthier family. The painful words had led to healing truths. The end of pretense had led to the beginning of authenticity. I wasn't naive enough to think our family's journey was complete. Healing takes time, and trust, once broken, rebuilds slowly. But for the first time in my life, I was part of a family that was trying, really trying, to love each other well. And that was something worth being thankful for. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who constantly put you down? It takes incredible courage to break the silence and speak your truth, especially when you've been conditioned to stay quiet for so long. If my story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for themselves is not only possible but worth it. And remember, sometimes the hardest words to say are the ones that ultimately set us free. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more tales of emotional growth and family healing. Thank you for listening, and I hope you find the courage to speak your own truth when it matters most.